After my parents destroyed my name, my mother called acting sweet and asked me to do one favor for Brenda. Hi, I'm Matthew, 37, and 3 months ago I stood across a mahogany conference table while my mother accused me of criminal fraud. She wore pearls, of course she did. Brenda always wore pearls when she wanted to seem important. Our parents flanked her, expressions carved in stone. Calm, grim, self-righteous. The panel of three across from us looked like something out of a legal drama. Judge Moreland in the center, with her silver bun and sharp eyes. Ashford from the Boston firm on her left. Detective Brennan from the fraud division on her right. My life, my license, my career, my entire identity sat in a manila folder in front of them. I hadn't spoken a word, not since we walked in. Not when the committee asked if I'd like to make a statement. Not even when Brenda claimed I'd falsified my bar exam and was impersonating a lawyer to compete with her. Nope, just folded my hands and stared at the polished wood of the table like I was waiting for it to split open and swallow me whole. Brenda's voice was syrupy as she explained to the panel how I'd always struggled academically and seemed to retreat into delusion. I resisted the urge to blink in Morse code at Graham, my attorney across the room. He looked calm, smug even. We'd rehearsed this. Let them talk, let them feel bold, let them stack the dynamite. My mother stood and cleared her throat with the poise of a woman about to narrate a BBC documentary. We raised Matthew with love and concern, but over time it became clear he lost his way. He told us he passed the bar. He told us he practiced law. We had no choice but to verify. She actually said verify like she was working at the FBI and not trying to raise her son's life out of sheer maternal spite. Ashford flipped through the documents they'd submitted. High school report cards, a withdrawn loan application from college, photos of me in a waiter uniform from 2009, as though being broke once was evidence of present-day perjury. Then Judge Moreland opened my file, and everything shifted. Her breath caught, just slightly but unmistakably. Her fingers paused on the paper. Her eyes rose to mine, something like recognition flickering behind the glassy calm of her expression. "Mr. Hamilton," she said slowly, "I argued before me last year, Fitzgerald versus Commonwealth. I remember it. You tore the prosecution's expert witness apart in cross. It was exceptional." Brenda blinked. My mother's mouth opened and closed. "I said then," Judge Moreland continued, now looking down again, her voice steady, "that was the most brilliant defense I'd seen in 30 years. She lifted her eyes and narrowed them at my family. "So why exactly are you alleging he's not a licensed attorney?" Graham didn't smile, but I swear the air around him smirked. I exhaled for the first time in 20 minutes and raised my head. "Maybe," I said quietly, "we should start from the beginning." Growing up in the Hamilton house meant one thing. Excellence had a face, and it was Brenda's. She was the daughter who walked on air, valedictorian, Yale-bound, ribbon-cutting smiles, and AP everything. Our parents clapped the loudest for her. I was the younger one, by 6 years, the accidental encore nobody clapped for. At dinner parties, my mom introduced her like royalty. "Brenda is in pre-law. Brenda just got an internship in D.C." Then she'd turn to me and say something like, "Matthew's exploring his options," as if I were a particularly disappointing vegetable. At 16, I stopped asking for help, stopped showing them my grades, stopped trying to impress them. I had a job at a pizza place and a B average, and as far as they were concerned, I was lucky to have that much. Brenda once patted my arm and said, "You're good with your hands, Maddie, maybe plumbing." She smiled like she was being kind. I didn't hate her for that then, I just believed her. After high school, I enrolled in a no-name community college 3 states away. My father said, "We support your decision," like I'd just joined a cult. They sent me $1,000 and a list of practical majors: culinary, auto tech, HVAC. Brenda, of course, got a new Audi and 4 years at Yale. But in Ohio, something strange happened. Away from the comparisons, the stares, the backhanded pep talks, I focused. I studied criminal justice just to dip my toe in and realized I loved it. Loved how law forced structure on chaos, how arguments had anatomy. Loved how it didn't care about my GPA in high school or my last name. It only cared if I could think.
Professor Lowell, a sharp, sarcastic adjunct with a past life as a defense attorney, noticed me. "You've got courtroom instincts," she said once, "and an impressive lack of bullshit in your tone. Have you considered law school?" I laughed and told her about Brenda. "You don't need to outshine your sister," she said. "Just outwork her. That's how law works." I took that as gospel. 2 years later, I graduated top of my class, transferred to Suffolk Law in Boston on a merit scholarship, and kept my head down. No calls home, no holiday visits. Brenda was clerking for a federal judge by then, and I was still that kid they assumed would flunk out. I didn't. I made law review, I made dean's list, I got a clerkship with a respected criminal defense firm, and after graduation, summa cum laude, thank you very much, I passed the bar on my first try. They never asked, and I never told, because some victories only matter when they're earned in silence. The Fitzgerald case changed everything. Frank Morrison, my boss and reluctant mentor, tossed the file on my desk one rainy February morning with a grunt that meant, "Don't screw this up." Daniel Fitzgerald, mid-level executive at a financial firm, had been accused of embezzling over $3 million. The evidence looked airtight. Wire transfers, altered ledgers, anonymous tips, everything but a signed confession. It also reeked of a setup. I buried myself in it for 4 straight months, ate takeout at my desk, slept under it twice. I hired a forensic accountant, tracked digital breadcrumbs, cross-referenced timestamp metadata no one else had even looked at. Slowly, the pieces twisted into place. It wasn't Daniel, it was his supervisor, Craig Linwood. The guy skipped town 2 days before the firm reported the theft, disappeared into the Caymans like a Bond villain with a head start. At trial, I tore the prosecution's case apart, cross-examined their lead analyst until he admitted their timeline had a 3-day hole no one could explain, introduced emails Linwood sent using Daniel's credentials, fake logins, masked IPs, digital signatures. Layer by layer, I exposed the truth. Judge Patricia Moreland presided. She was notorious, sharp, ruthless with unprepared counsel, and allergic to grandstanding. But when the jury returned not guilty on all counts, she actually smiled. After court, she called me to the bench. "Mr. Hamilton," she said, "in 30 years I've seen good defenses and desperate defenses. That was brilliant. Remember this day." I nodded like a human, walked calmly to the hallway, and then promptly threw up in the nearest trash can. The next week, everything changed. My inbox exploded. Interview requests, conference invitations, emails from firms that wouldn't have looked twice at a no-name associate from a budget law school. I stayed at Morrison & Associates, mostly out of loyalty, and because Frank handed me more responsibility than anywhere else ever would. The firm's name changed to Hamilton & Morrison. My name was on the door. My family didn't notice. Or if they did, they didn't care. When the Boston Globe ran a profile on the Fitzgerald acquittal, I sent my mom the link. She replied, "Very nice. Brenda is moderating a panel at Columbia next month. We're flying up to support her." I stopped sending links. Then came Valerie's wedding, my cousin.
An open bar, a sea of relatives, and my mother introducing me to her friends as our son Matthew. He does something in legal aid, I think. Brenda laughed and added, "You know, Matt, always marching to the beat of some tiny drum." That was the moment. The crack. The turn. I smiled, sipped my drink, and said nothing. But 4 months later, when the State Bar Association called me about the fraud complaint filed in my name, signed by my own family, I wasn't surprised. Not even a little. The complaint was vicious. 14 pages of carefully worded lies, padded with affidavits, out-of-context documents, and an insultingly basic timeline of my alleged fantasy career. Brenda's affidavit was the star of the show. 4 single-spaced pages about my history of unstable academic performance, obsessive jealousy, and concerning detachment from reality. She always wanted what I had, she wrote, but she lacked the discipline or capability to achieve it, so she created an alternate life. Alternate life, like I was playing dress-up in a courtroom.
My parents signed their own statements, calling me troubled, erratic, prone to exaggeration. They claimed I'd never even graduated law school, that I had probably forged my bar results. My father described me as someone who never quite found his place in the world. They attached high school report cards, my old W-2s from the pizza place, even photos from when I worked night shifts in college, as if any of that meant I wasn't a lawyer, as if struggle disqualified me from success. Graham, my attorney, sat across from me at my kitchen table, flipping through the mess with a scowl so deep I thought his face might stay that way. "This is bad," he said finally. "Not because it's true, none of this would hold up in court for 2 seconds, but because of what it looks like." He was right. Perception was everything in law. A single headline, "Prominent Boston attorney accused of fraud by own family," could tank a decade's worth of credibility. Clients might start pulling cases, referrals would dry up, judges would hesitate. "This is a strategy," Graham said. "They don't care about winning, they care about discrediting you." "They want to break me," I said, voice flat. "They're trying to drag me back to where they left me." The state bar had no choice but to investigate. They scheduled a hearing, gave us 4 weeks to prepare. Graham dove in like a man on a mission. We gathered everything: my law school transcripts, bar exam results, court records, client testimonials, judicial commendations. My name was everywhere. I was legitimate. I had the receipts to prove it. "They're going to look like fools," Graham said, "but it's still going to hurt." He was right again. The day of the hearing, I walked into that oak-paneled conference room like I was stepping into my own funeral. My parents were already seated, dressed like mourners, faces solemn. Brenda sat beside them in a gray suit that probably cost more than my car. Their lawyer was some high-profile misconduct guy from New Haven. He oozed polished concern, gave me a smile like we were old friends meeting at a college reunion. Judge Moreland presided. When she walked in, her eyes barely flicked toward me. Professional, neutral, unreadable. Brenda testified first. She painted me as an underachiever turned obsessive, said I'd started inventing wins in court, that I once told her I beat the DA in a murder trial, that I never invited them to a graduation because there was no graduation. I tried to confront him. I love my brother, but this is delusional. I sat still, my hands in my lap, my face blank. Graham had warned me, don't give them the satisfaction. Let them think they've won. Let them bury themselves. My mother went next.
She took the stand like she was stepping onto a Broadway stage, wringing her hands, voice trembling in just the right places. The committee panel watched politely as she spun a tale of a well-meaning mother watching her troubled son drift further from reality. "Matthew was imaginative," she said delicately, "always prone to exaggeration. We didn't think much of it until he started claiming he was an attorney. That's when we grew concerned." She shook her head, eyes glassy with manufactured emotion. "It was heartbreaking, truly. We just wanted to help him before he got in trouble. We thought the bar should know." She left out the part where she introduced me to her friends as someone who does legal work with criminals, like I was some kind of back-alley paralegal. Then came my father in his usual monotone. "We tried," he said, voice low and weary. "We supported him. We paid for some college. But he was always angry, distant. We didn't know what else to do." "Supported me? They sent me a $2,000 check when I left for community college and spent the next 10 years forgetting I existed." Their lawyer wrapped things up by calling me a danger to the integrity of the legal system, a man with a proven pattern of deceptive behavior and grandiose self-presentation. He gestured to my high school records like they were smoking guns, as if a C in algebra at 16 invalidated everything I'd accomplished since. And through it all, I said nothing, not one word. Graham stood when they finished, calm as a man ordering brunch. "Your Honors," he said, addressing the panel, "if I may, we'd like to enter into record the following." He placed a folder on the table.
Inside, my law school diploma, summa cum laude, my bar passage letter, top 5% in Massachusetts, my license, my firm's incorporation papers, a list of cases I'd argued, verdicts I'd won, clients I'd served, letters of recommendation from professors, judges, senior partners, and finally, a glowing editorial from the Boston Globe praising my work in the Fitzgerald trial. Ashford flipped through the papers, his brows knit together. Detective Brennan leaned in. Judge Moreland reached the final section and froze. The room stilled. "Mr. Hamilton," she said slowly, lifting her gaze, "you argued the Fitzgerald case before me last year." It wasn't a question. She turned to my family. "I called it one of the most brilliant defenses I've ever witnessed." Brenda's face drained of color. My mother blinked. My father made a sound like he'd just swallowed a thumbtack. Graham, still composed, said, "There is no fraud here. Only a family unwilling to accept that the person they dismissed as a failure has become something they can no longer ignore." Judge Moreland tapped the folder with one manicured finger. "This," she said sharply, "is a record of excellence, not fantasy." My sister opened her mouth, closed it again, and for the first time in my life, I felt something I never had with my family watching me. Power. Judge Moreland's voice shifted. That calm, neutral tone she used when pretending not to recognize nonsense, gone. What replaced it was cool, surgical precision. She turned toward my family like a surgeon prepping for an incision. "Mrs. Hamilton," she said, folding her hands neatly, "you've made accusations that, if true, would constitute criminal fraud, impersonation, and malpractice. Yet the evidence shows your son is not only a licensed attorney, but an exceptionally capable one." My mother straightened in her chair, like posture might salvage dignity. "We acted out of concern. We believed he was misleading people." Ashford cut in, his tone razor-sharp. "Did you verify anything before filing this complaint?" Their attorney jumped in, voice overly smooth. "My clients were acting in good faith, based on long-standing personal concerns and observable behaviors. Their daughter, Brenda, offered a sworn affidavit detailing—" "Yes," Judge Moreland interrupted.
I read it, including the part where Ms. Hamilton claimed her brother described fictional trials and delusions of grandeur. She turned to Brenda. "Ms. Hamilton, did it occur to you to confirm whether your brother had actually tried a case in my courtroom before accusing him of professional fraud?" Brenda's voice came out small. I didn't realize." "You didn't bother," Ashford said. "You filed a complaint that could have destroyed his livelihood and reputation without doing the bare minimum required of any first-year law student." Detective Brennan leaned forward. "Let's be clear. Filing a false report to a regulatory board is a crime. Perjury, if the affidavits were knowingly false, is a separate matter. The question isn't just whether this was malicious, it's whether it was illegal." My mother made a sound, half gasp, half sputter. "This has gone too far. We were just trying to protect the public." Graham stood calmly. "From whom? A man who successfully argued 37 criminal cases with a 91% win rate? A man Judge Moreland herself commended in open court? Or was it from your own discomfort at his success?" Silence. Then Judge Moreland turned to me. "Mr. Hamilton," she said, "would you like to speak before we adjourn?" I'd waited years for this moment. "Yes, Your Honor," I said, rising. I turned slowly to face them, my family, lined up in tailored suits and pearl earrings, watching me like I was the villain in their story. "My family never celebrated my achievements," I said, voice calm but strong. "When I graduated from law school, they were too busy at Brenda's wedding. When I passed the bar, they didn't call. When I made partner, they mocked it. They've spent years pretending I didn't matter. And now, when the world started noticing me, they decided the only explanation was fraud." Brenda's face crumpled just slightly. "They didn't file this complaint to protect anyone. They filed it because they couldn't control the narrative anymore, because the disappointment son outgrew the script they wrote for him." I paused. "They wanted me invisible. I became undeniable instead." Judge Moreland looked at me a long moment. Then she said, "This hearing is adjourned."
The panel finds the complaint without merit, and the record of Mr. Hamilton remains untarnished. My mother slumped like someone had unplugged her spine. Brenda looked away, and for the first time, I walked past them without shrinking. The fallout hit like a quiet bomb. The Bar Association published its ruling the next morning: formal exoneration, full dismissal of the complaint, and a pointed footnote about malicious and unfounded allegations made without due diligence. The story leaked within hours. Boston Legal Daily ran a headline, "Prominent Attorney Cleared After Family Files False Fraud Complaint." The article detailed my credentials, the Fitzgerald case, and my mother's quote about just trying to protect the public. Comments were brutal. By that evening, clients were calling, not to leave, but to say they stood with me. One even sent flowers to the office. Meanwhile, back in Connecticut, things unraveled. Brenda's firm issued a statement saying her involvement in the complaint was under internal review. A week later, she was suspended without pay. 2 weeks later, she resigned, voluntarily, they claimed, but word got around. Reputations move faster than facts. Her name stopped appearing in legal journals. Her LinkedIn profile went silent. My parents issued a half-hearted apology through their attorney, calling the incident a family misunderstanding. Graham responded with a polite but ice-cold letter outlining the grounds for a defamation lawsuit and a list of publications prepared to run the story if they didn't withdraw every accusation and publish a formal retraction. They folded in 3 days. The apology ran in the Boston Globe, just under the weather. It named me directly.
It acknowledged the accusations were false and unfounded. It called me an accomplished attorney of integrity and skill. I clipped it and pinned it to the corkboard above my desk, right next to a note from a client's kid that said, "Thank you for saving my dad." That meant more than anything. I never heard another word from my parents. Not until 6 months later, when my mother called. "We've been thinking," she said, voice cool and careful, "about Brenda. She's having a hard time finding a new firm. We thought maybe you could reach out to someone, help her land something." There was a pause. I didn't speak. "You know," she added, "because you're doing so well now." My laugh was short, joyless. "No," I said, and hung up. 2 years later, I gave the commencement speech at Suffolk Law. The students filed in wearing gowns too big for their frames, eyes glassy from sleepless nights and disbelief that they'd made it. I recognized that look. I had lived it. I stood at the podium, adjusted the mic, and paused. "My name is Matthew Hamilton," I began, "and I was not supposed to be here." That got their attention. I was supposed to be the dropout, the failure, the one who peaked delivering pizzas and never got past his sister's shadow. That's what my family believed. That's what they needed to believe. A ripple of silence moved through the room. But here's what the law doesn't care about: your last name, where you came from, whether your parents clap at the right times. Law doesn't need legacy. It needs clarity, tenacity, and the guts to keep showing up even when no one's watching. I scanned the back rows, found a girl sitting alone, mascara smudged, hands shaking. "This profession will test you. You will lose cases you should have won. You'll miss holidays. You'll wonder if you're enough. But listen to me carefully. If you got through this, you are, no matter who says otherwise." Afterwards, dozens of students lined up to shake my hand. The girl from the back row hugged me without a word. I never asked her story. I didn't need to. That night, back at the office, I stayed late. My firm, Hamilton and Morrison, had grown to 15 attorneys. We specialized in defending people no one else would. I looked around the darkened office. My name was on the wall now, not because anyone gave it to me, but because I earned it. Brenda never called again. My parents stopped sending holiday cards, and the silence was perfect. Some people get their strength from support. Others earn it by surviving the lack of it. I learned to speak only when I had something worth saying. I learned that the truth, when delivered with quiet confidence, is louder than any accusation. And I learned that sometimes the best way to win is to keep standing after they've already buried you.